Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game from the penultimate round of this year's US Chess Championship. Only two rounds finished without the result being a draw, one of them being Mishra versus Ray Robson. Robson was pushing for the better part of the game, and then in the critical moment Mishra blundered the game away, even though he was suffering for the better part of the end game. But yeah, that's what happened in the first one, and this one I believe is more exciting and more action-packed, so you guys will appreciate it more. At least that's what I think. So let's check it out. Sam Shankland versus Samuel Sevian. I don't know if his name is Samuel or Sam. I will check it right away. I don't want to trick you guys. Like in the previous video. Yeah, he is actually Samuel Sevian, but chess.com interface says only Sam Sevian, but okay. At least we got to the bottom of that. So Sam Sevian versus Sam Shankland. Shankland with white opens with pawn to d4. Now, it could be a very important game regarding the standings of the final round, but we're going to discuss that after we check out the game. So d4, we have knight to f6, pawn to c4, pawn to e6, knight to f3, and pawn to d5. Your most standard Queen's Gambit decline setup. And g3, Sam, well, both of them are Sam, obviously, but Sam Shankland goes for the Catalan opening with pawn to g3, d captures on c4, and bishop to g2. We have knight to c6. a6 is a bit more popular. Knight to c6 does look weird blocking your c-pawn like that, but it is the second top move in the position. We have castles and rook to b8. Sevian implying that he's ready to advance that pawn to b5, and the other Sam invites it. We have knight to c3 and pawn to a6 first. Even though you could play b5 right away, we have pawn to a6 preparing it first. Pawn to e4 striking in the center, and now bishop to e7. Sevian wants the castle as soon as possible, and queen to e2. Now d5 looks like a move you really want to play, but it's the top move in the position, and obviously, people know how to play against it. Even though it seems like Sevian is burning a bit more time, you can see that Shankland is still a full hour and 30 minutes on the clock. It's very easy to play against this as it's fairly straightforward. Captures, knight b4, you're going to play knight to e5, your pawn is nicely defended here, let's say castles, pawn to a3, and now you have to give back the pawn, knight to d3, knight captures, pawn captures, queen captures, and then something like bishop to d6, and this is very much playable for both sides, but like I said, maybe not poisonous enough. We have queen to e2, pawn to b5, now defending the pawn on c4, and rook to d1, preparing pawn to d5, castles, and pawn to d5. E captures, and now pawn to e5, but Sevian does not back down. He goes pawn to d4. E captures on f6, and now of course you cannot capture, the queen would hang, so bishop captures on f6, knight to e4, and now bishop to e7. Pinning the knight doesn't really do all that much, you're just going to capture with check, and then you're going to move the queen. So bishop to e7 first, and pawn to b3 now, challenging the c4 pawn, and now pawn to d3. And okay, you could say that this is definitely worth a piece, getting your pawns as far advanced like this, and if let's say c3 can be played at some point, then well, that is more than compensation. We have queen to d2 and pawn to f5. Interestingly, this position has been reached before quite a few times, so it's nothing new just yet. Knight to c3, and now there are a couple of games where pawn to f4 was played, but here we have bishop to f6, and it is now only as of move 17 that we have a completely new game. Interestingly, the top move in the position is pawn to h6. The engine really loves this one, so I guess no one really checked it up to this point. Aside from Sam Shankland, it would seem, as he still has a full hour and 31 minutes on the clock. So okay, bishop to b6, completely new game, and bishop to b2, preparing to counter the strong bishop on f6. We have bishop to e6, and now rook a to c1. Bishop to f7, and b captures on c4. We have b captures on c4, and now knight to a4, offering a trade of bishops. So bishop captures, we have knight captures, and now knight to d4. Offering a trade of knights, but also just trading down pieces. The more pieces that come off the board, the stronger these two connected pass pawns become. And really, at this point, it's all about getting rid of those pawns. And the best move for you to play is knight captures on c4. It looks like you shouldn't play it because there's this nasty knight to e2 check fork, but that's exactly what you should do. Knight captures, and after knight to e2 with check, let's say king h1, you're gonna capture the rook, but after queen captures, doesn't really matter, because remember, one piece was already sacrificed. So if you look at it now, you have two knights for the rook. Two knights are definitely better here. Let's say rook to b5, knight f to e5, those knights are just incredible. The d3 pawn will fall, and this is, well, it's a very dynamic position. Anything could happen, but objectively it is white who could be playing for the win at some point. So okay, knight captures on d4. This is what Shankland goes for. We have queen captures on d4, and now knight to a4. Preparing to create a blockade with knight to c3, but realistically, it was best to just give back the piece. Captures, 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 and captures, and after captures, some more captures, and now, okay, black is up a pawn. The passed a pawn is very strong, but the bishops will get traded off, and then it's two rooks versus two rooks. The extra pawn will not matter all that much. It's going to be a draw. So instead, after queen captures on d4, knight to a4, I believe Sam was still playing this for the win. He's not doing that great in the tournament, so he wants a full point with the white pieces, I believe. Rook f to e8 and knight back to c3. We have rook to b6 and bishop to f3, pawn to h6 and pawn to h4. We have rook to d8 and now king to g2. Rook to b1 also makes sense, but after king to g2, we have rook d to b8, doubling up on the b file, and rook to b1. Offering a trade, we have king to h7, improving the position a little bit, and rook to e1. We have king back to g8, and now rook e to c1. King to h7, Sevian repeating the position, saying, okay, there's no way for me to push this. The only way something can happen here if you decide to, you know, break the tension somehow. We have pawn to h5, and now king back to h8. We have queen to f4. Sam Shankland offers a queen trade, and now Sevian accepts. We have captures, captures, and rook to d8. Now putting the rook behind the passed d pawn, rook to d1, and rook to d4, putting pressure on the f4 pawn. And now, again, how do you play this? It's a very tricky position. The f4 pawn is hanging, definitely, but also there are other things to consider in the position, like can you go knight a4 and put pressure on this rook here, offer a trade of rooks, and can this be done? Well, d2 is a very, very annoying move here. And now if you capture the rook on b6, c captures, for example, and now rook to b2, something like c3, rook to c2, and you have the two rooks blocking the two connected pass pawns. I mean, that's a sad existence for the rooks. Even though white is up a full rook, white is not the one pushing for, for anything here. If these two pawns can be traded off for this pawn, and one more pawn gets to be pushed forward, could be very easily game over. Again, objectively, it's a draw, but crazy position. So, but it's instead after rook to d4, we have rook to d2 right away, and now rook captures on b1, knight captures, and rook captures on f4. Okay, grabbing a doubled f-pawn, nothing spectacular here. Knight to c3 and rook to h4, putting pressure on the h5 pawn. King g3 and rook back to d4 now. We have rook to b2 and pawn to d2. Other moves also can be considered, like maybe improving the position a little bit, but Sevian says, nope, it's time to start advancing. Pawn to d2. We have bishop to e2, now putting pressure on the c4 pawn as well, and pawn to f4 check, winning more space, but also freeing up maybe this diagonal in some lines. Could be interesting. King to g2, and now pawn to g5, grabbing more space. We have captures, captures, and pawn to f3 now, not allowing pawn to f3 by Sevian. We have pawn to h5 and bishop to d1. We have king to g7, and now rook to b7, preparing to capture on c7, rook to d7 defending, and now knight to e2, putting pressure on that f4 pawn. Rook to e7, saying, okay, you move the knight, I'm then gonna put my rook to e1, attack your bishop, and once you move it, advance the pawn and force you to trade bishop for pawn. So king to f2 and pawn to h4. Okay, the king goes to the middle of the board. The pawn marches forward. We have knight to c3. Now, okay, the knight is nicely defending the bishop, but the position is now lost for white. What you should have done here is play rook back to b2, go after this pawn, and now after rook to d7, now you go rook b4, and only after bishop to f7, defending the c4 pawn, now you capture on f4, and everything is perfectly fine. But after pawn to h4, knight to c3 was played, and now the position is winning. You just continue pushing, pawn to h3, and now what's the idea? Probably the trick was knight to d5 with this sort of a triple fork here. The problem with knight to d5 is that now pawn to h2 is just super strong. King g2, and you just advance the pawn to become a queen. Force the king to the back rank, and now yes, the rook is attacked, but rook to e1 check, and you're gonna pick up the bishop, and okay, let's say knight c3 attacks the rook, just rook to c1. And I mean, now you're just gonna lose. You won back material, and now after king h6, there's no defense against d1 queen, and also the knight is hanging, so you don't have time for rook to d7. So that's the idea. So after h3, king to g1 was played, stopping pawn to h2. Now king h6, getting the king off of the 7th rank. Rook to b4, going after the c4 pawn, and bishop to f7, defending. Very, very precise play by Samuel Sevian. And here, rook to b2, going after the d2 pawn, and it looks like a lot can happen here. Shankland is up a full knight, but it is Sevian who is winning. However, there is only one move that wins the game. Not an easy one to spot, so feel free to pause the video and win the game for Samuel Sevian while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this beautiful maneuver. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook to e3. What a nice move. Attacking the knight, and once the knight moves, you will advance the pawn to c3. So, okay, knight to e2. If you try to defend with rook to c2 and just hold on, bishop g6 is game over. There's no way to defend everything. The rook cannot remain on the c file, as both c2 and c1 are covered, and c3, obviously. So you're going to have to lose some material. So instead, after rook e3, knight to e2 was played, and now the pawn marches forward. Pawn to c3, attacks the rook, we have rook to c2, and now bishop to h5, played to perfection, I would say. The reason why bishop to h5 is so beautiful is that it counters rook captures on c3, which is an idea because the c3 pawn is hanging. But if you capture it, then bishop captures on f3, and there's no move for you to play. Rook is hanging, and the knight is attacked twice. And the only move basically you have, rook captures on e3, pawn captures. It seems like you can hold this, because how is black ever breaking through here? Well, the answer is often in the c file. Most often it's in the b file, but here it's in the c file. And after you make a move, let's say king to h2, you just trade and play pawn to c5. That's the key. C5, C4, and the reason you will not be able to stop C4 is because the bishop is tied down to the defense of the D1 square. So something like king captures, pawn to C4, king to G3, pawn to C3, and regardless of what you play, pawn to C2, and now the pawns start queening. So after bishop to H5, king to H2 was played, and now just bishop captures on f3, knight captures on c3, and of course hoping for bishop captures on d1, but not really, rook captures on c3, and now you're winning back all the material and the extra, because now you are up 4 pawns. Well, you're going to lose one of them, but still that's plenty pawns. Rook to c6 with check, we have king to g5, rook to c5 with check, king to f6, and now rook to d5, going after the d2 pawn, but you don't really need the d2 pawn. Bishop e2, we have captures, and pawn to f3. Rook to d8, and now king to e7. We have rook to d2 and king to f6. Rook to d8, and now king to e7. Playing a few moves, rook to d2, and now Sevian, of course, not about to repeat the position for the 3rd time. King to f7. We have rook to d4, pawn to c5, attacking the rook, rook to h4, and king to e6. Doesn't really matter what you play, as black will just continue pushing the king and the c pawn forward. We have king to g3, pawn to c4, the pawn is nicely defended by the bishop, so that's very nice. Rook captures, we have pawn to c3, rook to h8, and now king to d5. We have king to f2 and pawn to c2. Ready to queen the pawn, we have rook to d8 with check, king to e4, and now rook to c8. Stopping the queening, bishop to d3, and now rook to e8 with check. We have king to d4, and now rook to e1. If you go rook to c8 to stop queening, of course, just bishop to c4, followed by king to c3, and then the pawn queens. So here, rook to e1, but now just bishop to e2, and he was in this position on move 75 that Sam Shankland resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Whatever you play, the pawn gets queened, like rook to c1, you're going to play king to d3, then king d2, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, very nicely done by both of them, but it was a crazy line, and Sevian was the better of the two Sams in this game. And just so we don't forget the standings, these are the standings. And let's, the standings are a little bit weird because, well, Christopher Yu is out of the tournament, and you look at the standings and you're like, oh, it looks like a Wonder Liang and Ray Robson could overtake Fabiano, but no. Ray was supposed to face Christopher Yu in the final round, which means that he will remain on 5.5 points, for the rest of the tournament, as there is only one more round left. So basically, it is Fabiano Caruana who is in the lead, Sam Sevian and a Wonder Liang, Sam Sevian, and Hans Niemann, who are still in fight for first place, I believe. Fabi, of course, has the best chances, and if Fabi wins, then it doesn't matter how the other games are played, and Fabi will be facing Sam Shankland in the final round. So Sam, who hasn't been having the greatest tournament, it's now or never. You either take the last year's winner, Fabi, and take him down, so everyone gets a chance, or Fabi will just, keep trashing everyone, and he will win the title second year in a row. A Wonder Liang, who is currently in second place with 5.5 points, will face Dominguez, and I don't know who Sam is facing, but I think it actually could be Hans Niemann. Let me just check real quickly. Yeah, Sam is facing Hans Niemann in the final round, so it's going to be interesting. Not as interesting if Fabi defeats Shankland, but if he doesn't, anything could still happen. So yeah, that's the game and a little bit of extra info. Hope you enjoyed that. I would like to thank Giampolo Londono, BulletChessThriller.com, E04 Killa, an anonymous person, and Carlos Cerudi for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.